we have Bob Duane. He had a very successful career in the food service distribution business for U.S. Foods. He and his wife, Norma, have owned various businesses and have had entrepreneurial experience ever since they married a very long time ago. They invested in a high-tech company in the year 2000 that had a specialty in the real estate and mortgage arenas. They sold services and leads to mortgage and real estate companies. Bob was on the board of that company and advised them on strategy. So it was that initial investment that laid the foundation for the mortgage company he has today in Grapevine, Texas, which is in Tarrant County. Bob is an expert on divorce lending and helping people through a very difficult time in their lives. He understands the laws and how to correctly use ulti liens and spousal buyouts for the departing spouse, and facilitates the person who wants to keep the marital residence the ability to get that done. As the owner of Divorce Lending Headquarters, LLC, he is passionate about educating attorneys and clients on the options available to them. And before I start from Bob, listeners, if you are in front of your computer, go to Divorce Lending HQ, and there is just a wealth of information on how you can finance your home or buy a moving on residence during the process of divorce. So, Bob, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Brooke, and it's an honor to be here. Congratulations on your show.
Thanks. I have really enjoyed hearing from these people with just so many resources at their fingertips and so much education. And, clearly you're one of those people. So tell me just a brief synopsis of how you really got involved with the divorce lending part of mortgage as opposed to just regular, straightforward mortgage.
Well, great question. And if you lined up 100 mortgage professionals and asked them and tell them you're going through a divorce, and I would say 99, if not 100 of them, would say, come see me when you have your divorce final. And I was convinced about 12 years ago that that's the wrong approach. The right approach is to say, let's look at it. Let's look at it ahead of time. Let's collaborate with your attorney and make sure that when the divorce is final, you can refinance. And it became a passion to help somebody going through the tough time of a divorce. A lot of times, the biggest issue is the kids, and it thrills my heart to be able to, if they want to keep the kids in a house so they stay in that same school, to try to keep some semblance of normality in their life, then the whole objective is, how do we help? And that's where we help ahead of time by pre-underwriting before, and we're really experts in dispersed ulti, and I don't know other banks that will do this. If there are other banks that will do dispersed ultis, they don't understand it, and they don't understand the legalities. And I'm rambling on. That's not answering your question. Your question was why and how long, and the reason the why is to help people going through a very tough time in their life.
Okay,
so it's very rewarding to help those people.
Right. I feel similarly. So for people who don't know what an ulti lien is, and we're obviously here in Texas, for anyone listening across the country, you may be aware that Texas has different laws related to how we treat our homesteads, but there are similar names and similar tools in other states to facilitate a buyout of the departing spouse. So, Bob, can you give us an overview of what the ulti lien does here in Texas?
I sure will, Brooke. An ulti lien, as Brooke said, is specific for Texas. So if you're not in Texas, just think the word divorce buyout. And it's the same tool, but in Texas we have some specific laws, and the laws are that most. If I go back to my illustration of people in the mortgage business would say, "Oh, you need to buy out your spouse. That's a cash out. That's a buyout." No, an OLTI or a spousal buyout, a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, FHA and VA do not look at that as a cash out. They look at it as a spousal buyout, and probably getting in the weeds. But here's the thing you'll remember: if it's a cash out, there's more restrictions. You're limited to 80% loan to value in many states. You're limited also in your interest rate is usually at least 3/8. And if Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have what they propose to go through this year, it'll even be a larger separation between a regular rate and term refinance and a cash out. So that's why utilizing an OLTI or a divorce buyout makes all the difference, and it's exactly what should happen.
And it's what it was designed for, correct? I mean, it's not really, yeah, it is designed to transfer interest or ownership among the homeowners or between the homeowners.
Yeah, and an OLTI can be used. It doesn't have to be just a divorce case. An OLTI can be used. OLTI really in Texas at least says you have a portion of ownership, partial interest in that property. And it could be, we've done many OLTI liens of there's parents that pass away and there's 3 siblings and they all have 1/3 interest in the parent's house. That can be done through an OLTI refinance. And it's just so much better than someone else can. And in that example of those 3 people, if it was a $300,000 house and they all had 1/3 value and one person wanted to keep it and live in it, they've got 100,000 equity going in. So they could refinance and pay off the other 2 siblings, and they have a $200,000 mortgage and they own that house. They're the rightful owners of that home. So when you look at a divorce case, OLTI, it's a spousal buyout. And I'm going to caution people in this higher interest rate market. I've had a lot of attorneys call and a lot of clients and say, yeah, but my interest rate's so good. My husband always, my SB, TX, soon to be X, and then let's assume it's a male on this side. He'll keep paying that bill. Well, he may, unless he's in a car wreck and he can't work for a year and he stops paying that. You really need to make sure you get in your divorce that you get your name off that mortgage. Even if someone else has perfect pay history and everything else, I've seen in my mortgage career, I've seen more people come in with messed up credit because they didn't make sure that it got refinanced. Utilizing the OLTI lien protects you down the road.
Right. Well, it's really kind of a win-win because the person who keeps the house is able to basically finance that payout into their new loan. And the person who's leaving that residence won't have that on their title anymore, or won't have it, on their credit anymore. So it frees them up to do something down the road. Is that correct?
That's correct. And they can, go buy another house, which, after divorce, there is life after divorce. And we want to help those people and move on and in their life and rebuild it. And so we do purchases. We actually are one of the very few lenders that I know of that will do in a community property state. We can do a purchase before final divorce. In Texas, it's called a Rule 11. In other states, it's worded different. But if you're going through the process of a divorce, and it's a lot of times I've seen this when there's actual either physical abuse or drug abuse or any substance abuse, and they have to get out, and they need to buy another property to get out of that house immediately. We can help with that too, and we're one of the few people in the state that know how to do that. It's legal to do. You just have to have people, not only your loan officer, the closer, the title company, and have to all understand what a Rule 11 is. And and be able to execute that.
That's funny because you actually kind of guided me right toward my next question, which is that I do know for a fact, having worked in other places, that frequently mortgage loan officers are trained to just wait until it's over and then offer to help. So, for those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to help during the process of divorce, what sets your office and your staff apart from, let's say, anyone else who wants to attempt working with a divorcing couple?
Well, we do a lot of it, and we do a lot of it because we understand it, and it's very complicated. Most people that don't understand it, they're afraid. I call it ostrich management, and we have some clients that are going through a divorce that practice ostrich management, which means if they put their head in the sand, maybe when they pull it out, all these problems will go away. I mean, all those problems are not going to go away. They're still going to be there. And so what we do is we compassionately help those people. And I didn't explain what a dispersed ULTI is, but let me take just a second.
Sure. I was going to circle you back to it, but I think this is a good time to mention it. Go ahead.
Okay. A dispersed ULTI is where, let's say, Bill and Mary are getting a divorce, and Mary's keeping the house, and Bill, his portion of the equity is $75,000. And I want to come back and circle back to how do you get to that portion of the equity, but let's just say it's agreed upon.
I was going to have you talk about that too. So you're singing my song.
All right. Now let's just assume it's 75,000, but Mary can't qualify with the house with all the credit card payments at 24% interest. And so we come in and we do a dispersed ULTI. And the dispersed ULTI may make the ULTI with a proceeds with what's called an OPAL, an ULTI proceeds allocation letter, take and make the refinance ULTI $100,000, but it's dispersed $75,000 to the ex, to Bill, and $25,000 to pay off some of the debts that are keeping Mary from qualifying or to be able to live comfortably. So that's what a dispersed ULTI does, and we have done it and helped so many people. It's just it gives them breathing room when they're going through this tough time, and everybody else does that as a cash out. We're the only ones that I know of that know how to really do that and to do it right, because it is not a cash out, because in all the documentation, the debt is really transferred to Bill, and it's paid at the title company. Bill doesn't write a check, the title company does. And Bill and Mary have to be in agreement with it, and all the lawyers, and we do that day in and day out, and help people every single day with a dispersed ULTI.
Yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to jump into the equity portion. Brooke can provide you, or we can get you access to an accessible equity calculator. Most people think, well, I own a house, it's valued at $300,000, we owe $200,000, so there's $100,000 of equity, so Bill's split is $50,000 and Mary's split is $50,000. Well, that's not an accurate figure, because to get that $50,000 out, there are closing costs, and we would say that you would negotiate what part does Bill pay of that, or what is accessible, because you can't access all 100% of that equity. So we actually have a calculator that figures that, and it also figures, what if you sell the house instead of refinancing? How much money do you have to pay in real estate commission? And I was listening to Mila early, and excellent comments, and a professional in that area is so needed in this time, but they get a fee and there's closing costs. So we have a calculator that figures those out, so you would know how much are you going to split if you sell the house versus how much can you do if you do a refinance with an ULTI buyout to your ex-spouse.
Yes, I was speaking to a group the other day, and I said that oftentimes